Breaking Barriers.
My name is Gary Bontrager. I'm your host of Breaking Barriers podcast. I am here today with Chris Dix. He has been somebody that has been requested a few times to have on as an interview, somebody who's been involved in the sport of tractor pulling, and I know that Chris has also promoted other sports and has a lot of other things that he is involved with. So, Chris, I'm excited to have you on the Breaking Barriers podcast. I guess we're going to start from the beginning. What got you started? Like what age were you, and when did you get started in the sport of tractor pulling, like as watching and things like that?
Honestly, my first experience in tractor pulling, grew up on a farm in Janesville, Iowa, and we worked every day.
Right.
We grew melons, so every day in the summer you went to the field and you hoed melons all day long. And I saw in the paper that the Bremer County Fair was going to have a tractor pull, and I begged my dad, please, can I go? Can I please go? And he goes, all right, I'll let you go. And so I got to go to the Bremer County Fair and watch a tractor pull, and I sat on a hill and I watched tractors pull all day long, and I had my Massey hat on, and a guy that pulled a Massey earlier in the day comes by and he goes, son, you got the best hat in the whole place, here's a quarter. And I thought, boy, this is almost like Christmas. This is such a great day. And I loved the whole part of being on the farm. Even at 5 years old, I got to drive a little bee farmal
right.
with raking hay and stuff,
right.
and give it a little more power, and how could I make it go a little faster? And
right.
so seeing the big tractors spin and pop wheelies and all that was magic to a little kid.
Right. And I have a question with that. A lot of times when people, if they've been around long enough, what kind of sled were they using? Was it like a mechanical sled, or was it still the type that you had people stepping on it?
Well, and I was lucky in that we were very fortunate in this area. Eldon Westendorf had the mechanical mule.
Right.
So it was the very first mechanical sled that he built, hand built, and it had a really long pan on the front.
Right.
So you'd have a tractor drive on it for ballast weight.
Yes.
For the heavier classes, the lighter classes, but it had the incline.
Right.
It was a black sled with yellow and orange paint up the side, and for so many years, watching tractor pulls in the Midwest and up northeast Iowa and everywhere around, he was the sled that you wanted to have.
Right, right.
He was always fair. Everybody loved pulling his sled, and
his name comes up quite a bit too. He just was very impactful in how he built that. And that's even interesting because I interviewed a gentleman down in Eagleville, Tennessee, and he had built one of the early ones in that area that really worked. There were a couple that just didn't work well. And then I think Missouri and just different places that were starting to pop up. There was one in Illinois as well that I think had the patent on it in the very beginning. So I didn't know how that was. I mean, I always like to get in the history of that because it seems, depending on where we're at in what part of the country, some of those mechanical sleds were more available. And you clearly were in an area.
Well, and as I got to, whenever I was lucky enough to maybe see I'd beg my dad to go to more tractor pulls, and we went to another tractor pull, and it had a different sled, and it broke at that pull. and that was scary because the sled weight went flying up and broke the end off, and it's teetering on the top of and the driver looked back and he freaked out, and that was the end of the pull. It's done.
Right.
Sorry, guys. But, and my dad was, I don't know if it's safe to be at these anymore. And
right.
But you couldn't take it away from me anymore.
Right.
I just loved it.
So then what kind of happened from that point on? You just attended a lot as a teenager eventually, and
I got to really thinking about it after you called. It was so much of my, like I said, being Christmas Day.
Right.
Even then, so like they came out with little stomper pickups.
Yes.
So I built pulling sleds, 2 of them out of Legos. And at school in like 3rd and 4th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, we'd bring our little Lego or the little sled in and those stomper pickups and have pulls with the guys that had those after lunch.
Right.
And well, then right away we were finding ways to modify them. So you
Right.
take the battery out, and my brother with the foam wheels, he glued duals and triples and quadruples and then added a weight frame and then got a lantern battery. So, well, then it'd, as long as the motor'd take it,
Right.
but it'd go 5 times as fast.
Right.
So then we had a modified division.
So it's interesting you bring up stompers because I remember those too, and we just raced them, but then we would figure out ways to put bigger wheels off of something else on them and put 9-volt batteries in them.
So and then they couldn't believe that Lego, it actually worked. It worked
Right.
perfect. I had used the gears to come around and it'd wrap on the axle. It wasn't any more
Right.
technical than that, but it worked. And and I tested it with the ones we had at home.
Right.
But, and then my next experience was my first truck.
Okay.
The first truck I was driving around and I saw this Chevy short box and fell in love with it. It had 33-inch tires and popped the hood. And I'd been going around then following some friends that were brush pulling 2-wheel drive pickups, 4-wheel drive pickups.
Okay.
And I was just like, oh yeah, it's got a big block Chevy motor.
Right.
And I was,
This
and he's
is something you can work with.
This is something I could work with, something I could build up over time
Right.
that Dad wouldn't necessarily know.
Right.
And so it took some time, and I went up to a welding shop and had the supports for the rear
Right.
axle to block it.
Right.
And made a hitch. And then that one day I took all the weights off of all the implement that we had at the farm and threw them in the back of the truck and came to the fair and entered it in the stock class.
How'd you do?
I ran the big tires in the light class and got 4th.
Okay.
And I realized the motor was fresh 402
Right.
big block, but the automatic transmission robbed enough power. So I lowered my hitch height, put my winter tires on that were much smaller but better tread.
Right.
And by lowering the hitch height, then I got more RPM, and then I got 2nd place in the heavy class.
Well, good for you. Yeah.
But-
so you started and you were what? How old?
I was just driving, so
16 probably.
probably 16,
Wow.
yeah, 16, 17 then.
Did you keep pulling that truck?
I pulled it like one more time. I broke the lockouts. It was only half ton.
Right.
So my very first set was the stock ones, and then I got some worn lockouts with the little pins.
Right.
Well, they melted the next pull, so they got hot enough that didn't last. And then I looked around, and a friend of mine had older ones. They're called Cutlass, and they're a
Right.
steel screw in.
Right.
Well, those wouldn't break.
Right.
So I found a set of those, and I put them in and pulled it one more time at Antique Acres, and I got 1st place there
Excellent.
in the light class. I just figured I'm going to put the little tires on
And give it a
weight her
try.
up good, and then nobody was near me in that class, and it was not a power track.
Right.
So, and as I had it weighted, that's where one of my pulling buddies that showed up, he actually said, I think I could lift the back of your truck off the ground. And sure enough, with all the weights on the front, he could lift the back up. So he couldn't believe that a stock pickup was weighted that well.
So what were you doing? Where were you placing your weights at that point? Because today that's the big thing with 4-wheel drives, and they have weight boxes out front,
Yep.
so they're getting all that weight and trying to
So-
leverage it.
As the rear axle's basically welded in place now
Right.
on all the modifieds or
Right.
even brush pull, that's going to get the weight of the sled pulling the
Right.
rear axle, so it gets all the traction it needs. So you need all the weight on the front. So you get a distance from the front axle, how many inches you're allowed for the front weights to stick out,
Right.
and we had it all measured out.
Oh, you did. So you made a bracket to put your weights out the front.
I had a push bar, and then I said, well, I need something that can handle all that weight. And I went to the local salvage yard here and found some cold rolled steel.
Okay.
It was an L-channel cold roll steel. He goes, that'll take every weight you put on it.
Right.
So I bought that and took it to the welding shop, and he welded it so I could add it to my push bar.
Right.
And then take it back off after the pull.
So you could just use it when you needed it?
I could drive it daily and then take it back off. And
that was always fun when I was young to watch guys bring in those, and I still enjoy it, although obviously technology's changed some. But it was always fun to see these guys come in and start doing what you were doing and break parts.
Oh, yeah.
We're always like, okay, where are they at on this? Are they going to snap the U-joint, twist the drive shaft? But a lot of those things happen, but so much was trial and error back in those days. You know, today you can do some research and know, okay, if you're going to do it, you have to do certain parts.
Exactly.
But we didn't, nobody had that.
Right,
So,
nobody had that at that time, and right away my next pull is I busted a rear drive shaft.
Oh, you did?
And drove home on the front one.
Yep.
Pulled it out, and it had a slip yoke on it. So, but that was probably one of the best things for pulling that truck in the future, because I went and started looking at smarter things. And I said, he goes, well, the reason it broke is your angles, it's getting that gallop because of the knuckle.
Right.
And he says, if you had a constant velocity joint on there, then it won't gallop. And I said, well, where can I get a big one? He goes, how big you want? And I said, as big as you can mount on that truck. So it had a gear case, so I knew that wasn't going to break. It had a new process 205.
Right.
And then they added a big yoke, which was off of a ton truck. And then I went to another place that built heavy-duty drive shafts, and I said, I want one that can't break. And he goes, okay.
Yeah.
So he made a thick wall drive shaft, and he said, you'll break the truck before you break the drive shaft.
And it proved to be true.
It proved to be true. I never broke that. I never broke a knuckle lever. I got better U-joints, and
it all worked.
It all worked great.
No, there's so much technology like that anymore. I mean, I know even guys with tractors, trucks, all of that was such an experiment. So you kept pulling that truck for a number of years?
I pulled it for a while, and then the classes kind of went away from stock.
Okay.
And it got where I didn't have the money to play with it anymore. And so then I would just go and watch. And
so when you were doing that, though, I guess, were you doing a lot of brush pulls? Is that primarily?
Yeah,
okay.
Primarily brush pulls.
And I'm just so the audience understands, and I know I've talked about this in other episodes, because back in the day, the popular thing was like the NTPA, and they had their big pulls, and they were sanctioned. And then what would happen, a lot of times your local county fairs or other promoters would put on brush pulls, which just meant they'd make the rules for that day, and they were probably similar to what others were doing, but they would promote it. So when we're saying that, I just want people to understand what a brush pull is.
Absolutely.
But they were, that was really before we had these smaller organized associations.
Right.
And out of all that has changed today tremendously, where there's a lot of smaller associations and people can kind of find a class that fits their budget and things like that. So that's always unique. How all that has changed. There are still some brush pulls.
There are some great brush pulls.
Yeah, it really is. And what's interesting, sometimes they'll throw some pretty good money at the purse on one, like somebody will. And I'm like, gosh, they're paying better than, some of these sanctioned events. And it's to draw a crowd and get people to come in, and they kind of need to, but it's fun to see those.
Well, and that's part of what even drove my desire to be part of that even farther. Two of the guys that I started following are local guys. One from Shell Rock, Dwayne Gibson.
Yes.
Pulled a four-wheel drive pickup.
Okay.
Stock modified it up. He had a big block Chevy and a 1-ton truck, and beefed it up. He runs a welding shop. And another guy built a 2-wheel drive pickup, a Chevy, 69 Chevy. And I follow them, and we go to clear up to Wisconsin and Minnesota, and all these brush pulls all over the place.
So you were taking your truck Or this was after you had stopped?
That's
and you would
after I'd
just-
stopped.
and
So
then
I'd
you just
I'd-
go with them, or
I
follow?
drive my vehicle, or a lot of times I drive my dad's motorcycle.
Yeah.
And a long ways. I
Yeah.
mean, we go to a pole, and the longer it lasted, the better.
Yeah.
I remember leaving Wisconsin, quite a ways into Wisconsin, at like 2:45 in the morning.
Right.
And driving all the way back home,
And going to work.
and then getting up in the morning and going out and holding melons.
We were, I was just talking with another puller about that here last night at a tractor pull. And it's interesting. I mean, it's kind of shifted because now they're trying to get windows of time, and culturally, some of that has changed. And I guess from seeing what you've seen, I want your opinion on this, but seeing what you've seen when you were young and then to today, we didn't have all the entertainment. We certainly didn't have smartphones and computers. So you went to do things like that, and it was not as well organized because sometimes the technology wasn't there. And then if it ran late or whatever, you just took it in. And I know, I've talked with many that, well, we'd go home and, just go straight to work, because it was until they got home and everything happened just like what you said. So that piece of it just is very different, because today, if you get over a 3-hour show, you've lost your crowd.
Right.
And
Right.
the kids can't sit and watch it anymore. And
Well, and that's the thing that I think has changed so much. As a kid back then, I was all in. The
Right.
longer it ran, the better.
right,
If I was there all day long, terrific.
right,
But today, yeah, it's a 3-hour show, or
Yeah.
even two and a half.
Right.
And they're just ecstatic.
Right.
Get that in and get it in, because there's so many other things you're competing against.
you're right.
And it's got to have a lot of action. It's got to have a lot of things going
And
on.
it's got to keep moving.
Yep.
Because once they go over 3 hours, and I've witnessed this, they start losing the crowd.
Yep. Yep. You got to have something that's really a draw.
Right.
That's either going to hold them longer, or they're just going to dwindle around.
And then certainly you get into some of the larger events, they're going to maybe get people that travel further, and they're going to stay the duration. But more of the local stuff that we
Right.
experienced in rural United States. From that point, you kind of started following those two guys. How'd you progress? Because you've done promotion and you've done announcing, and
Yeah.
how did all that progress? And what organizations? I mean, just kind of take us through that.
Oh gosh. So, well, both of them pulled for a while, and then I like 4 or 5, 6 years, and then they sold both their trucks.
Okay.
Got out of pulling, and I was still wanting to be involved, and a friend of mine got me involved with JC's, which led to me helping at the Bremer County Fair.
Yes.
And I got involved in being on the fair board, and which they already had that tractor pull that I knew of.
Right.
That was still the mainstay event of the Bremer County Fair. It has been for dating back when I was born, and wanted to be a part of that, but also wanted to expand it. So
Right.
two of the events that I was involved with bringing to the Bremer County Fair was a combine demolition derby.
Okay.
And one of my friends went up to Minnesota, saw one of the very first combine derbies, and then held his first one over in Reedland, Iowa. And I think they had like 10 or 12 combines.
Okay.
And his kids ran a repair spot, and had some other guys in this area that all
Right.
had repair places. And they said, well, hey, could we find some older combines and put on a good show and
Right.
do a combine derby? And so he bid it at the Bremer County Fair. He was the president of the fair board, Ronnie Leistekow, and he brought up that idea, and it got shot down. And I was crushed, because I was like, this is going to be awesome.
Right.
We need to do this.
Right.
So he was ready to quit, and I went back and I said, let me work on it. Let me represent it next month. And I represented it, redid it, and he just said, if you can get it done, I'm going to be your friend for life, because I just want to be at that event and have it.
Right.
And so we got it approved. It passed by 2 votes.
Oh, wow.
And I basically guaranteed that it would make, we had a bid that it would make like $8,000.
Right.
And I think it made like 12,000 the first year.
Oh, wow.
So it was a
hit.
huge success. I think we ended up having like 20 combines, and it's just taken off from there. So I've looked all around the Midwest. I have never seen any event that had as many combines as we have had. We tried to limit it now, got 25 or 26.
Oh my goodness.
But it usually always has anywhere from 22 to 26
Right.
combines. And then you had to have classes because you don't want a small, say, Massey 300
Right.
against a Massey 760.
Right. Got to match them up.
Tremendous weight difference. So we had a small class, weight classes, a medium class, and a large combine class.
Interesting.
And that has taken off. Actually, this year, I don't know if it's the 16th or 18th year, but the
Right.
Bremer County Fair, but it usually brings in somewhere around $30,000 profit.
Oh my goodness.
And this year I get to announce it, so I'm excited to come back and announce it. And I know it's the anniversary of the Bremer County Fair.
Right.
So it's even more special,
Right.
Because I was on the board for 20 years.
Well, I knew that was a big event with that fair, and the tractor pull always stayed as a very big event too.
It's always been their main track event. They had NTPA forever.
That's what I
And
thought.
then they had a few years that went to Outlaw, and then back to NTPA, and then now they're at ECI.
Right.
The problem that ended up with some of the NTPA was the Minnesota pullers had a local regional event that they had that got put on our same date, and we weren't getting the hooks.
Right.
And at the Bremer County Fair, they want to see smoke.
Right. They want
the black
a
smoke,
crowd.
and we want to put on a smoke
Right.
show. So you got to have tractors.
Right.
And if you don't have enough tractors, it's not going to put on an
Right,
event. So
right.
ECI, we could get a few more tractors, so that's always been another big mainstay
Yeah.
there.
And I remember even when I was young hearing about the Bremer County Fair. I mean, that was always a big deal on tractor pulling. It was kind of one of those places everybody wanted to always go to and win. And ironically, I got to pull there last year. So, it was just, it was kind of like, wow, this is, sometimes some things come full circle. And but you're no longer on the fair board, but you're just involved. You're going to announce the Combine Derby.
I'll announce the farmer tractor pull and the Combine Derby this year.
Okay. Well, then likely we'll cross paths again here before the summer's over. What other things did you do? Did you announce some while you were on the fair board there?
I never announced. I was the beer man.
Okay.
So I ran the beer tent. I had a goal that everybody thought I was just flat crazy. But we started doing concerts. We started expanding the fair from 3 days to a full week. And I said, we're going to sell 50 kegs. And they're like, there wasn't even a beer tent when we started. We just wanted to get the beer out of the barns so the kids weren't drinking. We wanted it safe. And then
make a designated area.
And then have it where adults can have a drink and have it with a meal or with a show. And so that happened, but it was pouring a couple kegs is all. And I said, would you let me bring in a band or a stereo or something, some entertainment? We got some more people to come. I said, can I move the beer closer to the grandstand event? And well, maybe. So I utilized my JC friends, and I had about 60 friends that came. The guys carried beer trays, the ladies carried the money sacks, and we served 20 kegs carrying beer about 50 yards to the grandstand and back.
Oh my goodness.
And they were just back and forth, and we'd fill them up, and away they go. And then the fair manager at the time said, yeah, we can move the trailer closer next year.
Yeah.
And it took off from there. And I think we hit a peak the year, I think it was either 38 Special or REO concert.
Really?
We served 152 kegs that week at fair.
Oh my goodness.
So
wow.
That was the peak.
You guys have done some amazingly good stuff there. I mean, that's raising a lot of money for the fairgrounds and
Yes.
supporting the 4-H kids tremendously.
Well, and that's the part that people don't understand is, so just the insurance part.
Oh,
When I left the fair board, we had a $5 million insurance policy. I'm betting it's probably gone up from there.
oh, I'm sure.
But that was $15,000, $17,000 just for that
Right,
insurance policy
right.
to cover everything. And then all the kids that have a display or a project,
Right.
they have an entry that they pay $1
Right.
in. But when they get their blue ribbon or
Right,
red ribbon,
right.
they get money with it too.
Right.
And that comes from the fair board too.
Right.
And so it's a payout. We're not taking from the kids. They're getting their money back plus some.
Well, I've served on a fair board as well for a number of years, and it's tremendously, to me, it's valuable work because it's a lot of these kids understanding. We had kids come in that didn't have livestock, and you have kids that are just working with projects, but it's that team atmosphere. It's kind of a vacation at home almost, and teaches a lot of good work ethic and helping with setting up for the next event. We get kids involved in those things. But what are some of the other things you did then in truck and tractor pulling? Because you did announce some, didn't you? Or was it mostly the combine thing?
Well, I didn't announce at the fair. The other thing I got involved with was our Tough Truck Show.
Okay.
So I was looking for another event. We'd tried bringing in outside events, tough truck shows, monster truck shows, rodeos.
Right.
And we lost money on all those. So I was watching on TV, one of the shows was Pink's,
Right.
where they drag race. And I said, well, I like tough truck where you're driving a truck over. I had my old 80 Chevy beefed up again, and I entered some off-road rallies, and I said, what if I combine the two? Racing over dirt jumps. And I thought about it, and I looked at our track. Well, watching one go over it isn't very entertaining, but if you had side-by-side racing like the Pinks show did,
Right.
boy, that's entertaining. If you have local people racing, grandma
Even
wants to
better.
be there, dad and mom want to be
Right.
there, sister, everybody wants to be there to watch son.
Because it might be the only time they ever do it, and they want to see it happen.
So I set out to set these jumps that would slow the drivers down, because I know they're going to see their competitor side by side, and that's going to push them to want to go faster.
Right.
I don't want them ever getting in the crowd, so you got to make
Right.
it safe for the crowd, which we had the big concrete barriers to keep them away from there, but also didn't want them getting hurt.
Right.
So don't build enough teeth into the jump that they're launching 15, 20 feet in the air, but make it more of a roller jump that they can get some air, but not too much.
Right.
And make it safe, but make it entertaining.
Right.
And everybody hated that I had a down and back where they had to make a turn. And everybody said, that's going to be the worst thing you could ever do. And now it ends up being one of the best things, because
that's where a lot of action
that's where all the
happens.
action is in the corner. Can they make that turn to get back? And the ones that make that turn the best virtually win.
Right.
And it's got to be one of the places where everybody wants to sit. It's
Right.
got to be so. But that show has taken off. We had it on a Monday night at the Bremer County Fair for many years, and it was making $15,000 for the fair on a Monday night, which
Oh my goodness.
even I talked to the guys at the state fair, and they said, yeah, Monday we don't make money.
Right.
You just don't make money on a Monday night. People don't come out on a Monday night. You're making that much on a Monday night at a county fair?
Right.
So, and ironically, that event I presented as an idea for other fairs. If they wanted to do a fundraiser, they could do their own, copy our rules, copy our track setup, and that's taken off throughout the Midwest. It's pretty pervasive everywhere. So, but it's a fun entertainment, and but then I needed a change.
Right.
So I wanted to transition. I'd kind of decided 20 years at the fair was enough, and a friend of mine invited me to work at Antique Acres with antique tractor pulling.
Right.
And first I was going to be there to drive a Packer tractor.
Right.
And the announcer couldn't make it. He goes, "Can you announce?" And I said, "Sure, I'll do whatever you need." So I announced that event and then announced it the next year. And then another friend said, "Hey, we got this national antique pull down in Sigourney. Would you be willing to come down and announce for that?" And sure. So there was the Spring Nationals. There was the Winter Nationals. They had a couple antique pulls in McElroy. I announced those until the smog got too much in the building. They won't allow them anymore. But
so how many years did you announce at Sigourney?
I'm still announcing there.
You are? Okay.
Yes.
I thought you were.
Yep.
So I just had, and I meet so many people, I struggle to keep up with names, but I know it was Pat and
Walsh?
Tom Pfeiffer.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
They actually, I think, were the people that started that tractor pull in Sigourney.
Oh, it could be. Yeah.
And I just interviewed them a few episodes ago. So if you guys are listening to this and you want to find some more history about this Sigourney tractor pull and antique tractor pulling, that's how the Pfeiffer brothers got started pulling. And frankly, I find out that's how a lot of people got started, because they could take their dad's old M and some John Deere or AC or something. And so that was common, but it's really became more organized. And so you announced quite a few of those tractor pulls yet then.
Yes, yes. So the spring one is, I forget, that's pretty early in the year.
Yes.
I want to say like...
if they want to know anything about it,
Yeah.
do you have a Facebook page or website that you could recommend?
Go out to the National Antique Tractor Pullers
Okay.
Association,
Yep.
and it's
Yeah.
well kept up, but the dates are out there. But the Sigourney pull is in a building, and they do a good job of
They
putting
do.
putting plastic on the walls of the building to try and keep it as warm as possible.
Right.
But it's just a big livestock building that's extremely long, and they pull right down the middle.
Right.
But you know, it's still the stepping stone
Right.
for the next build up
Right.
of the bigger tractors. And you know, as they get this, then they want to fix more, and they want to put a bigger engine in, and they want to
Right.
And
the thing that's so unique with a lot of these antiques, they're limited still in what they can do because they're only designed to take a certain amount of power.
absolutely,
And so the rules really help, for the most part, keep it affordable.
there's some guys there that spend a lot of money
Well,
too.
there are.
But yeah, it's a lot more
But in
economical.
relation to what
Oh, yeah.
the next step, it's quite a bit different. The other
Quite a
thing is
bit.
a lot of these tractors, they can pull it with a half-ton pickup and a car trailer.
Yep.
And it's a lot more economical.
Absolutely.
Way to get started. It is a lot of fun. If you want to know, I'm just going to plug, if you want to know what it looked like to see your grandpa's tractor pull, you can go to an antique pull and see it.
Yeah, and
It'll be there.
So I pull it, or I announce at the Sigourney pulls up here at Janesville. There's Antique Acres.
Yes.
I'll do 3 days of tractor pulling there, and they're going to have a
Wow.
showcase this year. So there's a special Massey class. So Massey 44s, 440s, whatever, you pull those, and there's big money on just that class. So they're going to pull like 5 times, different speeds, different weight classes, and the culmination of their distances is the place they get for the big money.
That's interesting. I like when people do that.
They had a Super M class last year that was a big hit. This year is the year of the Massey at Antique Acres. So, but there's 5 sessions of pulling.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that they were doing that much there at Antique Acres. So you bring up Massey a couple of times. It's probably what you grew up with as a kid on the farm. That's kind of how we all like what we like, is because that's what Dad or Grandpa had. The thing that's interesting, you mentioned also 44 Masseys. Those things got used some when they started building these hot rods back in the day, which we call modifieds today. But a lot of Massey 44 rear ends got used. They were a universal tractor, and they could cut up the fronts, and they had a lot of options with how people could work with them.
Mr. Massey had a lot of very unique ideas in how he built the tractor.
Yes.
And the more I learn about all of his history, before he met Massey Harris, to make the
Right.
Massey Harris tractor, he had developments before then.
Right.
And I just heard not too long ago, he designed the quick hitch, the 3-point hitch.
Really?
That's universal on every
Everything.
tractor sold today.
You're right.
Every tractor that's sold that's got any horsepower has a 3-point hitch on, and he built the very first one.
Wow. That's amazing. I did
And-
not know that.
And just, yeah, but every tractor, there's so much, every tractor's got a story.
Right.
That's the best part about tractor pulling. And
Right.
like you said, I grew up and we had Massey's. I had a 165
Yep. Those
diesel,
were good tractors.
and didn't have a lot of horsepower, about 50 horsepower. But it was a tractor that loved to pull.
Right.
The harder you pulled it, the more it liked it.
Right.
So we bale heavy bales of hay. Each bale was like 100 pounds, and
Right.
we'd have 150 bale loads. And we had a big hill that we'd have to climb to get to the
Right.
other farm. And I'd have to be down into third and pull the motor power back and have it wide open,
Right.
and she's smoking like crazy, but
You'd climb the hill and
it's
go.
digging the whole way and loving every bit of it.
Right.
And,
Right.
but that, or even hauling hogs, we had a hog carrier and put that on there, and the front end was way up in the air, and you'd back up the hills because couldn't put enough weights on the front end.
Right.
Just all the fun stuff
Right.
of growing up on a farm.
So, all the years that you've announced, I've got to believe you've seen some parts failures, maybe accidents. Can we talk about those a little bit?
Sure.
People, I think, often wonder why we have some of the safety features that we have. But then when I sit down with folks like you, I always like to ask that question, because a lot of the audience tells me too, they like to hear all these stories on that.
I've got to see a lot of accidents that, I think parts are going to break.
Right?
I think one of the very first things I ever saw, some boys had a 65 Chevy 2-wheel drive pickup.
Right?
Had a clutch, and they decided that they were going to test around with nitrous. And so they were not legal to run nitrous, but they were doing it anyway.
Right.
And so they run a small block. Well, he dumped the clutch, and the clutch didn't fully engage. So you can see from the crowd that it starts smoking and it's slipping, and he just got it clear to the floorboard, and it's slipping and slipping and slipping. It's not spinning the wheels like it should. And we're trying to, even people in the crowd are like, stop, stop, stop. And boom, that clutch grenades and came right up through the firewall. And I mean, he had a windshield, and it busted through the windshield right up through the firewall and cut through his side of his boot and took part of his little toe off.
Really?
And so immediately after that, to pull in that class, you had to have a scatter shield on that
Yep.
clutch, because you're not pulling unless you have a scatter shield.
Right.
And then all your U-joints, you have to have guards around
Guards
that.
around 'em.
And that, even in the stock brush pulls, you had to have
Right.
it insurance-wise.
Right.
To have it, and that became, you had to have insurance to cover the show, had to have waivers, people sign
Right.
off before you hook.
And he's fortunate it wasn't worse, but that's when the cast flywheels have now pretty well all gone. You got to have steel flywheels.
Yep.
And as far as those blankets, Kevlar blankets, you got to have them on pretty well everything anymore. It's a lot of fun until somebody gets hurt.
Right.
And it's one thing if the operator gets hurt, because
Oh, yeah.
they chose to put themselves in that position. The crowd came to watch a show.
Right. And it's, and it happens to everything.
Yeah.
I watched a brush pull over in Tripole, Iowa.
Yep.
And guy had a really hot running Deutz tractor. He'd pulled it for years. It was one of the best Deutz pulling tractors I'd ever seen. And got partway down the track, and it split the tractor in two.
What broke?
It blew the clutch up again.
And it just basically cut it.
He had a blanket on it, but it sliced through the blanket and split the
Busted
tractor.
the casting.
But the castings,
and then it just collapsed.
and it collapsed together
Yeah.
because he didn't have
Right.
the connecting bars that are now
Right.
mandatory
Right.
to keep the
Today, tie bars that need to be, is what they're calling them.
Right.
They just, they're, and I knew it happened because of a few accidents, but another reason he probably didn't have a steel flywheel either at that
Right.
time.
Yep. And it's, you know, and there's simple little things, but there's big reasons for it.
Did he get hurt?
He got pinched, but he never got really
Never got
hurt.
really
He didn't
hurt.
walk good before, but he did probably walked a little worse
Or
after it.
after that?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
Wow.
the nicest of guys too. So
Yeah. That's interesting. I've just never seen a lot of accidents. I've always not been there, I guess, the right time or whatever. But are there some others that come to your mind as you think about this?
I was in Toma when they flipped the tractor over.
Tell us about that. How old were you? A young man at that time?
I was fairly young, and I was, I mean, big time into it. Oh gosh, and I knew the guy because my bank that we actually financed him and his brother.
Okay.
And so he was pulling down through, and the tractor got to side hopping, and it started bouncing, and it broke the hitch casting on the tractor. So no more weight pulling, it's wide open. It took off, pulled the air shut off.
Right.
So his front ends, he's on the wheelie bars, but he's wide open flying down the track with the front end up on the wheelie
But
bars.
the tractor separated from the sled at this point.
It's separated from the sled, and when the front end came down, they didn't have the supports.
Right.
They usually put lighter front ends on.
Right.
It dug in, and the nose went down and went straight over on top of him because he's seatbelted in. The rules were you had to have a seatbelt, but
Did
no,
he
no
have a
cage.
cage?
No cage. And right away, I mean, everybody knew it was bad. Safety officials, they're, you know, stay back. But, you know, everybody that pulled with him, they're racing out there, and literally they lifted the tractor off of him to get him out.
Right.
And he was paralyzed. Bad deal.
Never did regain. I mean, the paralysis lived with the rest of his life.
Lived with the rest of his life.
Just for an example,
I
too.
think the name's Ricky and Randy Rose is their family. And
Okay.
It's one of the boys.
Yeah.
But that was next year. He had to have the cage
Okay.
because that's not going to happen again.
Right.
And
And they probably also then went with what they call the skid bars or
Yep.
up front. That way, if something breaks, it's not collapsing all the way.
It's got to support the front end of the
Right.
tractor and not
Right.
allow it to dig in the
Right.
track like that. And
Right.
but that was probably one of the hardest to watch.
Yeah, that would be a difficult one to see because
Yeah.
everybody's probably thinking he got killed or something. And
Right.
Didn't know what they'd find.
You brought the ambulance out. He got hauled away. You're sitting there wondering. And sadly, the next class that was up was the mini rod modified, and they're a wild show no matter
Right,
what.
right.
They've got a full cage and everything. So one of the first tractors comes down, and he's back and forth, and gets sideways, and so he stops, but the sled kept coming and rolled up and over the little mini tractor.
This is at Toma at the
At
very
Toma.
same pole.
Same pole.
Like next class.
Next class. And so they got to dig him out, and he's fine. But it was just
The safety equipment.
Safety
worked.
equipment did exactly what it was supposed to, but you know, as a person sitting in the crowd, my stomach hurt.
All right.
I'm just sitting here going,
Where's this sport going?
I don't know that I can watch this much more, and I love this, and
Right.
but I can't do this.
Right.
And I'll be honest, for a while, that was my last big pull
Really? Okay.
because it hurt.
Right.
It hurt. I don't want to watch somebody get hurt.
Right.
You know, I mean, I know parts are going to break, but I never want
Right.
to see anybody get hurt.
Right.
And you know, and that slowed me down a little
Right.
bit. But so it's kind of brought me back to some of the slower stuff. And,
Right.
And you know, stuff that you see. I mean, there's family involved throughout all of it.
Yes.
But I see it for me more on the small, the brush pulls, the antique stuff. I mean, I was announcing at the antique pull, one of the guys broke his tractor. And I watched other guys that are his worst. I mean, they don't even act like I mean, they're not real fond of him.
Right.
But when he broke his tractor, they were all, I mean, it broke the rear casting, the rear frame, the whole, cracked it Boom.
Right.
Not that you're going to go home and fix it.
You got to buy parts.
You got to buy a new tractor.
Right.
Because you're going to start all over.
Right.
Huge investment. And they're, well, hey, I think I got these parts. I think I got this. I can get you this, and I'll get you this, and you don't have to pay me nothing. And it's the part about pulling that if they get their stuff broke, I want them back because I want to beat them at their best.
Right.
It's no fun to beat somebody because they broke.
Or they just quit because they didn't have an opportunity to come back and couldn't find parts.
Right.
I will say that too. The thing I have learned, because this is only my second year in competition, but the thing I have learned, I raced motocross, done demo derbies, done some car racing. The thing that's so interesting to me is tractor pullers are the friendliest people. It's family. It's
absolutely.
What it is. It's family. And you're right, there's fierce competition. There are people that don't like each other, but it's not aggressive at the level that some of these others are. And when it comes right down to it, though, they will help anybody out. I mean, I've experienced it personally, and I'm sitting there thinking I would not have done that. But I didn't realize that's how the sport is.
Yeah.
Because I just seen it from other sports, and I'm like, they're like, oh, good, he's out.
Yep.
But they'll come right over and start offering parts and pieces immediately.
Absolutely.
So,
I was just going to expand too that, and when accidents happen so one of my friends that truck pulled. Right. He got killed in an accident with a planter. He was working on it, and it fell on him and killed him. And he had a nice truck, and he was so excited about pulling it the next year, and he wasn't there to pull it.
Right.
And I was announcing at Antique Acres, and they brought that truck, and they were going to pull it for the family. One of the guys there said, "I'll drive it for you." And I was announcing, and I said, I know he's looking down from above, smiling, because he got to see his Ford run down that track one more time, and they're still pulling it now. And he started with a blue and white Ford, and they went and found one and built it back. I don't know that it's the same one, but they built that, made that a 4-wheel drive, and so they've got 2 of his trucks, and it's just how the pulling world deals with loss. Right. Is something to be marveled at.
It really is.
I was up at, I think is one of the best brush pulls. They call it Mac Attack, up in McIntyre, Iowa.
Okay.
They don't charge you anything to watch. There's no admission fee. They've got some good people that come out and have a food stand. They say, please use our food stand because they're here to support you. That's what we're going to get. But everything goes to the pullers for pulling and entry fees and all this.
Interesting.
And they put on one heck of a pull, and one of their guys had passed away. So they were honoring him that day, and all the people come out, and they lined up their tractors on the track, and they all said some things about him, and then they brought his tractor, and one of the guys was pulling that. Well, and ironically, they ran his tractor legal, so he got a distance pull. Right. The rest all have a speed. It's all speed class, so you can't go over at a certain speed. Right. 8 mile an hour, 12 mile an hour. Right. Well, every single one of them knew, I'm breaking it today, and I'm donating my money to him and his family. Right. So you're watching every tractor go down the track wide open as they're pointing to him, just giving it everything you had. And the neat part about it is that pull, because it's a brush pull, had Massey's, Oliver's, a David Bradley, John Deere, Case, all the different tractors that you could ever imagine. Right. And to watch all them and listen to them tell their stories about being around him, that's a tractor pulling family. Right, yeah. That's powerful too. It is. And I was like,
it's therapy to the family.
It is therapy to the family.
That's, well, go ahead. I was
going to say, I know they keep coming back. Right. And they're asked to come back. And if it's hard for them, we're trying to make it easier because we love them.
Right.
Because
and it's part of their process of healing too. If
Right.
they can continue to understand through that experience, that family could understand why probably part of his love was for that sport.
Oh yeah.
Just
yeah.
the connection that people have in the sport. But that's really cool. Any other stories you have of maybe broken parts or something like that?
Oh gosh. Well, I said, you know, it's every single rule that's in the book for all these different classes has a reason.
Yes.
I was at a pull fairly young in life, and I watched a turbo go apart.
Right.
And the turbine went out the stack and ended up landing like 2 feet away from us, and it's still spinning in the dirt. Just white hot, because it back in those days, I think it was Northeast Iowa Tractors Pullers Association, they'd have fire out the top of the stack about that far.
Right.
Little pyramid, so that fire's going right through that turbo the whole way, superheating it, and it heated enough that it split that turbine, and out the pipe it came. So that's why they got to have the crosshatch in the exhaust to eliminate that piece from ever getting to the crowd. And I said my dad got up, grabbed his pair of vice grips, grabbed it and walked over and gave it back to the puller.
Right. What's interesting, you know, because of things like that, the cross bolts were typically what they would put in the pipe.
Yes.
You know, now it's advanced to where we need to leave those, but we also have one that bolts between the pipe because sometimes it can split out in the pipe. And it's starting to go to where we're also having to put a cross in the front because the front piece can fly out through and has and hit people. So it's when those things go down the track, there's a lot of safety that the crowd never sees, but it is for their protection.
Oh, and, it's for the crowd's protection. It's for the driver's protection. It's for everybody. And I mean, as a person that would love to be part of putting on a pull anywhere, I don't want anybody to ever get hurt. No. And so we're going to go out of our way to make it as safe as possible. But there's, you know, things happen and
I did a little whining when they started adding some of those things because I'm thinking, what's this going to cost me? But at the same time, I understand it. I feel selfish even having those thoughts because you find out, somebody got hurt. That's why this is here.
Yeah.
And at best case scenario, they didn't get hurt, like what you just mentioned, because that could have landed on you. So.
I was going to say, I thought of one more thing that was hilarious back in the truck pulling days.
Yes.
Not everybody put in the time to make their truck able to withstand the rigors of truck pulling. And we would joke about people that would take something straight off the road and pull it because your tie rods, you can watch the front wheels doing this in the four-wheel drive class and brake, and or drive shafts, you know, the 3 bounce rule on this. And we joke about it and laugh, but I had a guy that was driving a 2-wheel drive pickup all the way down the nose, trying to keep the front down. And he had weights in the back too, getting traction, but I noticed that his truck had already started to bend a little. And I said, I think you better not pull it today. I said, I think you need to take it back and at least get a welder.
Stiffen up that frame.
And weld that frame, box the frame, put some more steel on it and box it.
Yeah.
He goes, no, you don't know what you're talking about. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. I mean, it's going to be fine. I said, all right. He hooks up and he's flying down the track and pretty soon, boom, the drive shaft literally imploded on itself. It
like twisted up
and
sucked it to
pushed them together. So the truck went this way. So it A-framed the truck. And he's in the cab looking down at the dirt, and the box is pointing up at the sky, and his drive shaft that was 6 feet long is now 2.5 feet long.
Because it just like a screw, it just pulled it together.
It just snapped it together, and I'm he looked out the window, and I'm over there, and I'm like, Hi.
Yeah, told you.
I told you.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so those are funny. A lot of them today, especially in these diesel trucks, well, even the gas, they got a lot of horsepower in them. I mean, they've got some of them have custom built frames at this point, and there's a lot of safety builds in them. But yeah, you'd see the stock, what they call stock classes. They're reinforcing those because they're still they're still flexing.
Well, you're getting to the limits of where there's more power available for four-wheel drive diesel modified pickups, ultra unlimited rods modifieds, super, the heavy super. They're all three never going to run out of power.
No,
you're never going to snuff them out. It's just how much traction can they find on a track?
Yeah. How can they connect it to the ground? That's the battle because the power is incredible.
It's off the charts. And the turbos that they're running are huge.
Yeah.
And a turbo, I mean, it just keeps feeding on itself.
Right.
So my friends the Stummies that live up in New Hampton, when they were just starting, I remember at a pull, he said, you got to get out of it at the point where you're going to spin out because it'll ruin a set of tires.
Right.
Because
it'll light them up.
It's going to go crazy at the end when you're wide open and you're spinning.
Right.
And you got to get out of it. And
a set of tires might grenade the motor. It's a lot of bad things.
All that bad things.
Which is another great pulling family.
Oh.
Just salt of the earth people.
I've been so fortunate to see some of the great pullers throughout history.
Right.
I mean, so
who are some of those?
Early on, I'm gonna say Bremer County Fair. At the Bremer County Fair, there was local guys, Little's family, Little's Widowmaker, John Deere tractor.
Okay.
John Boy, the two brothers.
Okay.
They had a John Deere, Dick Buss. You did a one on him.
Yep.
He pulled a 4010 or 4020 John Deere with a Woody sticker on it back in those days.
You've seen the early days of that tractor.
Really early days.
Right.
Danny Schultz pulled a Super 90 early on.
Really?
A Massey, and he pulled so much fuel to it, it literally run past the pump, but pulled that at the Bremer County Fair, and then for years, pulled a 1466 kind of in brush class, big tires on it. Did a great job there. And then as it got the bigger, White Lightning, they pulled a big case tractor. And then, I got to see Gardner Stone with his 4-jet engines.
Really?
Oh.
That had to be a sight to see.
Unbelievable.
Right.
And at night, he'll light them up, and there's 4 flames that are 15 feet tall, and then light them up, and away you go. And I mean, I said, how fast is he spinning those back tires? And I'm like, got to be 150, 200 mile an hour.
Right.
It's unimaginable. He's, the other tractors aren't that deep in the track where he's
just digging a
3 or 4 more inches deep all the way down the track.
Right. He's turning them
He's turning so much dirt that they got to dig him out to get to the hitch at the end. And get to see that. The guys that ran multiple modified engines, Ron Warschkow, one of the big modifieds back in the day.
Yes. There have been a lot of requests to have an interview about him, and it'll happen. He did a lot of that. Oh gosh, you've seen some national names come through Bremer County, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so like now, Jack Kielmeyer pulls a semi, Jack's toy.
Yep.
Okay. I got to see him pull a 4-wheel drive pickup, and he had 2 of them called Double Trouble.
Okay.
Up in Minnesota.
Really?
So he had 2 of them identical. So he'd pull the first one and then go back and make modifications and then win the class. And the next year he showed up with 3 of them. And that third one was hotter than the other 2. And it's just like boom, boom, boom. And then next he had a T-Bucket Roadster that was modified in NTPA.
Right.
And then he built Jack's toy, the semi. And, watching the
progression of people building
building bigger and better, and seeing all that, and seeing, like I said, the best pulls for the money. You know, growing up, there was a brush pull in St. Lucas, Iowa.
Okay.
Where they shut the town down on a Sunday. The guy that was the mayor had a tractor, and you sit on the hillside, everybody in town made food, and we get there at 10 o'clock and they pull till you had to get the pickups and cars out to get lights to see them pull at the dark. And it's just like, oh, this is so wonderful. I just was so enamored with going there. I never wanted to miss that pull.
So they lit the track with vehicles on each side.
On each side. So you could see it dark because they didn't have any lights on the track.
And that's what they used. So you were there for hours and hours.
Oh, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. Yeah. But, you know, other local pulls, I used to go up to Waukon and watch their pull at their Grand Fairgrounds. They had a lot of great pulls. My friends that they got some, the Plainfield Sportsman had an area to the east of town where they had a track, and they would put on a pull every year, and it always started late, and we got so upset with them. So we said, can we just take it over? And so those three guys got together, and it was going to be a lot of the pickup classes, and then had an open class, which would bring in everything. And they had like $5,000 money for a payout for winner take all.
That was a good show.
So you had you had super stock tractors, modified four-wheel drive pickups, stock four-wheel drive pickups, two-wheel drive pickups, stock, modified, regular tractors that like 18,000-pound farm tractors that thought they could go slow and put enough weights on, and they tried to make them all equal enough to pull.
And so it was one class.
One class, winner take all.
Oh my goodness.
And I was just like, and it was packed.
Yeah.
Just packed, and they made so much money from that pull that they bought a scale for next year. And every year they just were adding more and adding more until then they modified their truck. At that point, they had a 510 cubic inch limit on the motor. Single carburetor, 750 carburetor. Single. You had to run a dual plane intake. So it would limit you. You could build a big 510 cubic inch motor. The problem is you're not going to get enough air, and it's going to starve it for air. And sure enough, one of the guys built a crazy motor. He'd come flying down the track, and 120 feet, she ran out of air, and she's wah, wah, wah. But that second of lack of air killed all his momentum. And then when he tries to hit it, when he's in it again, it's done.
Yeah, it's too late.
It's too late.
The weight is transferred.
The weight caught up to him, and it's all done there.
Oh my gosh.
But it was a way to limit it and make it fair for everybody and not get it so money. And they do that a lot with a lot of pulling today. I mean, that's why we have all these different classes, and somebody coming in, they can kind of pick, you know, whether it's mini rods, modifieds, trucks, tractors, they can kind of start to pick what their budget's going to fit. Absolutely. What are any other accidents or stories on things like that? Oh gosh. No, I guess I said, you know, some of the other great pullers. Yes. Well, I gotta say. Because up in this area, there were a lot of good. There was a class of tractors that hooked me in deeper than anything. They called it Northeast Iowa Tractor Pullers Association. Yes. It's a single turbo class, and I was enamored with a D21 driven by Wes Gielau out of Denver, Iowa. Yes. And it's one of the classiest, called the Land Handler. It was one of the coolest tractors to me, and it was unique. Most tractors get hooked into the track, and then they go. That tractor liked to kind of gallop down the track. And it worked for it. Once he was, he's gone. It's out the end, it's gonna fly. And I loved watching that tractor.
Outran.
And I watched it. I followed him wherever he went for many years. Got to watch him, and the unique competition against him here was the Queen 2, driven by Butch Franzen.
Okay.
Which he worked at John Deere's, took a diesel 4430, took the top of the motor off, turned it to alcohol, and put a supercharger, a 1271 supercharger on that tractor. So, and it had the kind of the white front end
right.
of so like the Knight Rider.
Right.
But that Queen 2 was a supercharged alcohol tractor when he finished, and he pulling that Northeast Iowa class against Wes and some of the other guys, and it was beyond anything you'd ever see anywhere else, because I never saw a supercharged tractor in a class like that.
Yeah, that was unusual. A lot of those alcohol tractors ran turbochargers, and they didn't really run superchargers. It really never caught on, and I'm not sure why, but that's very interesting, because now the light limited or the limited super stocks are, a lot of them are alcohol.
Yeah. So Wes, he pulled it for years, and then he went up to add a couple more turbochargers, and so I think he had three, I think. And I was following him with a friend of mine from Janesville, and literally, I was working Fairway at the time. I got off at work at 5 o'clock, and we raced all the way down to southern Iowa to a pull, and we drove through rain, and we're like, well, maybe they're still gonna have it. We're gonna be a little late, and we're flying down there. And we pull in, and I saw black smoke, and they said, oh, we missed a whole bunch. And they said, we just got our money paid. And I said, how much we missed? And they go, that was the test pull. So we walked down, and we had a perfect seat right at 300 feet. We're right at the finish line, and it was a power track. They had some of the best pullers there, one of them being John Klug.
Right, yep. He's
like 10-time world champion.
Yeah, incredible puller.
One of the premier ones, and Wes is pulling against him with his brand new manifold and 3 turbos, and they have two tractors that get full pulls, Wes Gielau and John Klug, and there's a pull-off.
And just so people, if you aren't aware of it, today we have what we call a floating finish. Because they're not water cooled like they were, so they have to just let them pull and whatever gets the distance. When you talk full pull, it was 300 feet, and if you went past 300 feet, those guys all had to come back around.
And
they'd
pull again.
Add weight and then go again.
Yep. They'd add weight to the sled, make it a little harder.
Right.
Shut them down a little earlier. And so the pull off, there's those two, and not a person left.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's watching this, and because you've got the national champion for multiple years, you got a guy from Denver, and this D21 that runs so hot. So away they go. Klug pulled first, come flying down, and he was kind of all over the track. Got a good distance. I was going to say like 260, 270. Right. Wes come flying down through and got stopped, and I'm like, man, it's close.
Right.
It's close. We're sitting there, we're right there, and I'm like, I don't know. And they waited, and they announced it, and Wes Gielau won by like 1 inch.
Oh my goodness.
And I sat there, and we sat there for the longest time. And I thought, boy, you don't get much better than this.
No. What was the measuring equipment at that point? Were they still running a string across the track? Or
that one had, I think even Eldon Westendorf was at that one. So he had it was mechanical then.
Driven off the sled.
Driven off the sled. But, you know, in the old days, like you said, you'd have 4-H kids or whatever come out there, and every 30 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, you'd have the stakes that they'd measure out beforehand, run a string across it, and then measure from then where that sled was, and calculate it and then enter it
And then you have to write it down on paper and take it back
write
up
it
to
down.
the announcer. And
Yep.
it
And
was it was very unique and rustic, but it's what we had.
it's what we had. And even today, you know, like the antique pulls that I'm announcing, they'll have from the sled, they'll have a monitor that I see the distances. So I keep track of the distances
Right.
there, and I'm announcing the distances. And then they'll enter them in a computer. But I
Right.
calculate them too.
Yeah.
So I can announce them right back. But
Right.
the technology today makes it a whole lot friendlier
Right.
for the people that come to a pull. But, you know, I love to provide some of you were talking earlier about, was at first the mechanical sled, and I said, you know, I know, and I've seen video of the stone boats.
Right.
Where you'd hook on and they'd pull them along and people'd step on.
Right.
And the problem is that 2 hours in, well, this one's got to go to the bathroom. And,
Right.
and he was 300 pounds, and he finds a kid to replace him, and he's 50
Right.
pounds.
Yep.
So not quite the same.
No, and that was my first experience at a pole was, you know, with my dad stepping onto these as it goes by. But you couldn't do it with the speed and the horsepower either. I mean, that made it to where it wasn't safe anymore.
Right. When when it's stock and you're moving slow, it works fine.
Right.
And but I love the sport. I love that it's got so many different opportunities in different levels.
Right.
So we've got a young boy. We're here at our church.
Right.
And I've got a young little boy, Kyle Kramer, who got leukemia.
Right.
And his family went through the tornado and it hit their house.
Oh, no.
And they survived it. And he put his lawnmower in the local parade that we're a survivor. And he drove his little Gardner tractor through the parade. And it created such a fanfare that a local promoter that promotes garden tractor pulls invited him to bring his stock lawnmower to their pull to pull his lawnmower. And they made sure he did well.
Right.
Well, he got hooked. He wanted to pull the next one, and the next one, well, they said, well, you got more weight on yours than these. We can't just let you always win.
Right.
So we're going to make it fair, but we want you to come back.
Right.
So then the family bought another garden tractor pull, and now he's pulling this sharp little international lawnmower in a garden tractors with the bar tires.
Right.
And to watch that young man who's fought leukemia for years be so excited about tractor pulling, garden tractor pulling, it's something. It's really something. And
Wow.
And that's why I said it's something in my heart that
Right.
I can't hardly put into words.
Right.
Because that little boy, it makes his world watching that.
You know, when people fight a disease like that or a health condition, the powerful part of it is just giving them something to get focused on outside of their own condition. And a lot of times it helps them even find healing or even endure the process because they're just not, you know, it's crazy how our minds work and how our bodies adapt. But
Absolutely.
that's a wonderful thing. If you brought him to Waverly and wanted to bring him over, I would love to do something with him.
Oh, yeah.
At that pool when we're up here. So
He's
but we can talk about that off camera. I don't want to take up time on this show, but that's what the sport's about.
Absolutely.
That's it right there. Anything else you want to throw in there as we kind of wrap this one up?
I would just say, go out and, you know, even if you've been a town kid or a town family and you've never been to a fair that's had a tractor pull, I would encourage you to go and watch it. If you got, some of the tractors do get loud, so
Yes.
you might want to bring some headphones, or you can get little foam things to put in your ears to protect your ears, but puts on a heck of a show. It's a great sport, and give it a chance because it's all over worldwide.
Right.
It's a great event. It's spectator friendly, It just, it's the farmer's way to compete.
You know, it's interesting how many people from other countries just even watch this show. And the thing that's changed, I would say 30, 40 years ago, by almost a majority, everybody that pulled was a farmer. And I think today, when we look at that, it's far from that. I don't know if it's even 50%. But one thing that's attractive, like you had mentioned, is, you know, the garden tractors. It's an entry level. But then you've got trucks, you've got little mini rods, different types of trucks. So it's adapting to, if somebody comes out to a tractor pull, which is what I just call them because I grew up calling them that. But today, you know, there's modifieds, there's trucks. You'll never know what all you might see out there.
I said, you get to some of the bigger ones, watching a semi pull.
It's an experience.
That's a show.
Right.
It's something that you're never ever couldn't believe how much they've modified them. And I've been, again, so fortunate to see, you know, Tiger Reese that pulled his semis.
Right.
The Madam Butterfly semi, the Buckeye Bulldog.
Yes.
I mean, some of the most amazing semis that have pulled for years and years and years. And getting to watch the show and how they've modified their semis to put on a show.
Right.
When you're done at that end of that night, I guarantee you're going to sit there and go, wow, that was really something. Because there's times where even in the crowd, you're going to feel it shaking the whole grandstand.
Right.
They make that kind of power.
Right. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
So one of the most unique things I'm going to share real quick, and I don't know if you've ever been to Springville, Iowa, to their tractor pull, but they will, at the end of the night when it's dark, cut all the lights and take a steam engine down the track. And it's just an amazing fire show that they put on. So it's that was really cool to see.
Well, and I'll finish this.
Yeah.
Antique Acres, they've done that many times.
Really? Okay.
So there's a couple of old steamers a couple of years ago, I think it was 2 years ago. They had two of them that they brought out and they put sawdust in so it sparks.
Right.
And it's a spark show like you've never seen out of this.
Incredible.
But what made that pull the most amazing pull was I went around the day before, and John Deere was one of the tractors that day, and there was a John Deere Waterloo Boy.
Right.
One of the very first tractors ever built. It's 14 horsepower. And I said, would you even consider bringing it around to pull it? And he goes, sure, why not? And I said, I don't know that anybody's ever seen a Waterloo Boy pull.
Right.
I said, this is something that needs to be seen.
Right.
So he says, yeah, I'll do it. Now, 14 horsepower is not a lot. It's a two-cylinder, so the sled's got to help him a little bit.
Yeah.
But just to see a tractor that old, the very first of the first tractors ever, pulling down a track.
Most people probably never even seen one.
Right. It doesn't look like a tractor.
Right.
It looks more like wheels attached to a frame with a two-cylinder out there that's kind of got a lower frame.
Right.
It's a complete, that's why I said events like Antique Acres and some of these shows that have the antique stuff, don't miss out on coming to some of them.
Right.
These are shows that show stuff where the beginnings of some of the most tremendous advancements. The trains came from these old steam engines and the steam power and what it can do. And
well, basically that Waterloo Boy was just a power unit that they figured out how to self-propel.
Right.
But I've even gone to some of these antique pulls and things, and maybe only had an hour or two, but you can walk through, see all these different pieces out there, and so it's a great experience. Any other thoughts you want to leave with anybody?
I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity. I've been lucky beyond my wildest dreams to get to travel and get to see all of these pulls, and meeting the people that I've got to meet, and the pullers and the families and now that I'm an announcer, I announced at Antique Acres 2 weddings that happened there.
Right.
And when I did we did the one for the family that lost the father, and I had 3 pullers come up and give me a hug on the announcer stand, because they said, man, that's what we needed. Right. That's what we needed. We need to go pull because he wants us to pull, but we needed to heal. Right.
And a lot of times that's how you heal when you're in a sport like that, is going back and doing it again and retelling all those stories. But no, Chris, I appreciate you taking time out of your Saturday afternoon. It's interesting how much people enjoy hearing all these stories of the history of the sport. And yet I know it's a commitment, and some folks don't care to do it. But if you're listening to this, please encourage folks that have been in it to do it, because that's how we preserve and honor those who have really built this great sport of truck and tractor pulling. So
absolutely.
With that, I want to thank you for watching this episode of Breaking Barriers. Please leave a note in the comments and hit the subscribe button and follow us so that you can get all the new episodes. Thank you.
Breaking Barriers.